So hi everyone and welcome. My name is Khalil. You've been receiving emails and invitations from me, so you probably heard my name. It's not the first time. I'm the head of community at Juno Journey, leading the Learning Table community. And with me today is Brandon Ilges. We'll share about him a little bit more. Before we start, I just want to briefly take you through our community and what we're building here, and then we'll dive right into it. So I promise it's not going to take more than 4 minutes. I've timed myself, so I'm proud to say I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna meet the time. Yes, okay, perfect. So just a little bit about the Learning Table community. In the past, I've been with Juno Journey almost from the beginning. And I was lucky enough to be the first customer success manager and build the department, which is today insane. And working for many years with incredible L&D, HR, enablement, talent development professionals from every company you can imagine across the world. And it's been really a true honor to be part of so many amazing processes and mostly learning and growing thanks to this partnership with our customers. I can say that both about us as CSMs, but also as a company and as a product. And last year, we realized that it's basically, this is our time to give back, not just to our customers, but also to everyone who is doing this tough job and mostly doing it alone. So making that impact over companies, organizations, making sure everyone succeed, but you can't do it on your own. And that's where the Learning Table community really came to mind for us. And we've been working in several hubs, building networking communities to really help people find each other and support each other. And we're so proud that we started doing virtual events as well, since we have people all over the world, like Daniel from Toronto. We don't have a hub in Toronto. So now Daniel is not alone, and she or he can learn from peers, respected peers. So just a little bit about our community and what you can benefit out of. So first, we have the expert-led sessions. This is the second of many expert-led sessions. Basically, what we've done is ask our community, what are your main challenges? What are you facing today? Where do you need help? We took that and we asked the best people we thought of, can you lead a session that will be a combination of your knowledge, but also a stage for people to bring their questions, bring their challenges, and share with each other? And that's exactly what we're going to have today, and in every month, you'll get the invitations along the way. Our networking events currently in 7 main hubs in the US, but we are always looking to grow, so keep an eye on more invitations. And professional matchmaking. So part of what I love to do is to jump on calls and see how can I help, because I have this amazing network of awesome people that can really help and support each other. So I'm going to invite you, and I hope you'll agree, to meet with me and to see if I can help with any intros, connections, or anything that this community can bring you on a more personal level. Now, my next challenge is to introduce you to Juno Journey, and I'm going to do that in 1 minute. And after that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to give the mic to Brandon. I will say some people wrote in the form that one of the things they came for is to learn more about Juno. So just like a heads up, this is not about us or our product. We're not going to talk about it at all. Other than this 1 minute, I'm just going to give a frame. But we're having a product demo in 2 weeks, so we'll send invitations to that. If anyone wants to learn more about the product itself, we'll be more than happy to see you there on the 27th. So just a little bit about Juno. From day one, Juno has been aiming to really help and support L&D, talent development, organizational development, enablement teams do their job better. And that's not because we know something you don't. You know best. What we want to help is with bandwidth. We want to make sure you're able to do your job best by having the tool to support you best. Because everyone wants a piece of us, right? Everyone has just one more request, one more need, one more thing they need us to do. And since we're such amazing people, and we always deliver instead of having the time to focus on what really matters, on our stakeholders, on our strategy, on that impact that's usually been pushed aside. by just the massive stream of requests. And that's why we came up with the team of L&D agents. The JJ agents, as we like to call them, Jaden, Jasmine, Jeremy, Gemma, Juno, Journey. Yes, that's clever. Basically, their job is to make sure we take the heavy lifting off your hands, enabling you to focus on what really matters, making sure everyone in the organization get what they need when they need it. And if you are a one person or a small team, they're really there to help you make sure everything's done the best way on time. And we do that with two models. That's the last slide. The Juno training, which is an AI-powered LMS, but I can promise you can forget everything you know about the traditional LMS. And Juno Growth, which is a goal-driven LXP and talent development, enabling people to move from just learning to goal-oriented learning and growing. That was 1 minute, right? That's it about Juno. Now let's talk about the real thing, the session today. One of the challenges that people really shared they're dealing with is scaling onboarding and enablement programs. And the reason why I asked Brandon to lead this session is not just because he's a seasoned enablement and onboarding architect with all of this experience, and he worked in Coursera, which is really cool, and really done all these amazing things. It's because Persona AI themselves went through amazing scaling process in the last year. When I met Brandon last year, there were less than 200 people in the company. And today there are over 500. So that's 1 year growth. That's massive scale. And that's why I really thought Brandon would be a great expert to kind of lead the conversation. But I will say, this is a conversation. We mean it when we say it's not just a webinar. So although it is a webinar, like a Zoom webinar thing, so you can see each other, but you can use the chat. Please do. I can say from other webinars, the more you use the chat, you can ask each other, you can react to each other. That's awesome. You will never disturb. You can raise hand. I'll give you ability to say things. That will not disturb Brandon or me at all. We want you to engage. Think about yourself. You always want engagement, right? So we want you to engage. We want you to participate. If you have questions, if you want to share your own knowledge, your own experience, this is really what it's all about. So please do. You don't have to open your camera, but if you have something to share with everyone and to support each other, that's what the community is all about. You can also write in the QA area any question you have, and I'll make sure we, once Brandon's finished with his first part, to kind of like invite you to share the question out loud and to get the answer. So that's it from my side. Brandon, take it away. Thank you everyone for coming, and let's start.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Khalil. Yeah, thank you to Juno Journey for hosting this and providing this space for everyone to learn from each other. Although I'm kicking it off, I really echo Khalil's sentiments that I think one of the best parts about this format is that there are a bunch of experts in this room. I'm going to present one perspective, but definitely I'm looking forward to learning from everybody as well. So I've prepared a brief presentation. I hope to take about 15 to 20 minutes. And then we'll kick it over into the kind of open format to hear, what's top of mind for y'all and to work through some things live as a group and provide some creative problem solving. So I'll go ahead. I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. And how I wanted to kind of start this is just with like a little bit of brief context. I think Khalil also did a great job of talking about just like the incredible scale that we've seen on the enablement team and more broadly at Persona Identities in the past couple of years. But I wanted to just kind of provide that narrative before I jump into some of the key learnings and themes that I wanted to share with the group. So a bit about me. So I've been the enablement program manager at Persona for a little over 3 years. Before then, I was in a variety of customer-facing roles. I spent a majority of my time in my career actually at Coursera, which is where I really learned a lot about instructional design best practices, pedagogy best practices, both from our in-house teams there. They have a teaching and learning team dedicated to focused to helping a lot of educators create the best e-learning content possible, as well as working with the universities and the corporations that actually create the content to power and fill that library of content on Coursera's platform. And so through engagements with working directly with those partners and those pedagogical teams, I learned quite a bit about instructional design, which has really informed a lot of like what I'm doing in my day-to-day today and what the enablement team is doing at Persona today. And when I joined, I switched from a customer-facing role to being part of the internal enablement team at Persona. We were just a team of two. The head of the enablement team, who was also previously in a customer-facing role, one of the founding customer success managers at Persona, and myself. And I think this is a common theme. You start out as a small team, maybe even just a team of one. You're going from kind of 0 to 1, and it's a big challenge. And so a lot of what I'm going to share is like this tremendous and really I feel a lot very grateful for the kind of growth journey that I've seen over the past few years, not only for Persona as a company, but even for the enablement team. The fruit of our labor has really paid some dividends in terms of the team's scope expanding. Now today of course, onboarding and enablement continues to be like new hire enablement continues to be like a big focus for us, but we are putting more investment into continuing education. We're making big bets in things like early career programs where like new grads we're creating like a talent pipeline for the company where we're bringing new grads and folks that recently graduated into programs where they get mentorship. And Also just the fact that we've grown from a team of two to a team of seven this year allows us to really kind of get a little bit more refined and play to the strengths of the different members on the team in terms of specializing. And so a lot of what I'm going to share is kind of in line with that narrative and that story of like what this journey has looked like over the last 3 years, how we got to the scale that we're at today. But we have to start at the beginning, which is, in 2022, myself and my manager on the team were thinking about, okay, how do we go from 0 to 1? How do we build the enablement foundations? And I think if there's one thing, oh, sorry, before I actually get to that, Khalil was kind enough to also share some of the survey questions and the thoughts that folks had shared, before the session. I found these kind of general themes and questions that related to this particular part of building the foundation. Questions like, hey, if I'm really cut budget constrained, how do I work build more with less? Or if I have a really small team, how do we build more with less? How do we balance trying to create personalized learning experiences with also like meeting the scalability needs of the company? And then as we get going, what enablement efforts are going to be the most impactful to help deliver results quickly? I think if there's one kind of lesson that I can really evangelize for the most, it's to focus on building a learning culture, especially if you're a small team. Um, Again, we were a two-person enablement team when I joined in 2022, and we really wouldn't be where we are today without the buy-in of folks around the company who really believe in the fact that like learning and development and continuous education is vital to making sure that people can stay effective in their role and be as effective as possible. Um, there's a lot of different ways that you can tactically kind of action on this theme. But, in the interest of time, the one that I thought would be useful to share with this group is these kind of recurring training and learning avenues. And so there are many different ways that we leverage these at Persona. A couple that I wanted to highlight here, I've put on this slide. One that we call Product Deep Dive. It's a weekly 1 hour format. There's actually one happening today at 1 o'clock Pacific time, so I'll be joining that a little later. This is the product teams, the product marketing teams, and the enablement teams set a recurring agenda. We deliver updates about like what's changing in the digital identity and compliance industries, as well as like what's changing with the product, what are key launches. And so it's this ongoing kind of learning and training avenue that we have a standing agenda for to help our go-to-market teams, keep up on the latest and greatest that's happening. There's a smaller kind of more targeted version of this that we also have called Tech Services Knowledge Share. It's a weekly 30-minute meeting format. And as you could probably guess from the title, it's more focused on some of our technical services teams. So it kind of brings together our engineering and product teams with teams like solutions engineering, sales engineering. And so it does get a little bit more into the technical specifics. And a lot of times we do end up actually we help craft exercise-based learning experiences. We'll bring either experts from the team to show case studies of what they've built, or if it's a new feature that we're launching, we'll talk a little bit more about like, hey, like let's try this out. Let's create a scaffolded experience so that you can get hands-on and feel comfortable doing this with your customers in the field. Another thing I'll say about all these avenues is that Persona is a recording heavy culture. So we record like all of our trainings using tools like Gong and things like that, which really leads me to the second theme in learning, which is especially when you're starting out and you're going from 0 to 1 in terms of building out the programs, you want to leverage existing and pre-built materials because that's going to help get you to a state where you can launch things faster. I know it's not always the case where you can really plug in and play, right? Where some of that content does need to be adapted so that you're, putting your voice on it. You're making sure that it's meeting the instructional design and like learning best practices that I think everyone in this room already has. But by leaning on the subject matter expertise of others and a lot of great content that's already been built, you can curate, right? And then add on layers of your own expertise or reframe and kind of edit, right? And so what I wanted to show here with this slide is that in those, go back again to 2022, we were launching our first role-specific onboarding programs for many business roles like customer success managers, solutions engineers, um, account executives. So when we were launching those programs, we looked across the organization to see, what are our existing resources that we can pull from and curate. And this included things like actual recordings from the field to show like what demos, like what a good demo looks like, right? What does good look like for any given kind of motion or activity that somebody in their role does. Leveraging those previous live trainings, like I mentioned in the avenues and the previous kind of slide. If there's existing e-learning that we already had, or that other folks have created and like kind of, e-learning repositories. We do a lot of partnering also with our documentation teams. So things like technical writing teams, help center teams, as well as product marketing and marketing teams. At Persona, those teams are creating a ton of great content around industry-based knowledge and education in the form of blog posts, marketing collateral, documentation. That stuff all really feeds into e-learning modules that we'll create, talk tracks that we create, battle cards that we create, a bunch of things there. So really, it's helpful to lean on existing materials and maybe reframe it or add your kind of layers on top of those. And last but not least, especially when you're just getting started, prototype and just launch things. One of my kind of biggest challenges is focusing a lot on polish and thinking, being a bit of a perfectionist. And so something that I've had to actively practice really in this role is to be cognizant that, we have to launch something and that there's always going to be this kind of journey for continuous iteration. So it's really effective to just try some things, for some of our trainings, rather than putting a ton of time into building an e-learning module. We started as a live session. We record those sessions, we gather learner feedback, and then we take an iterative approach to refining it and thinking about the scalability. But we kind of, there's a mantra that we have at Persona, which is start small, think big. And I think that's kind of a good mantra here when you're getting started with building the foundations of your programs. The next kind of theme area that I think comes up quite a bit for folks in onboarding enablement roles is, hey, how do I actually show the value of the work that I'm doing? Particularly if the company is growing and I'm feeling really strapped and I could potentially need some help, right? The kind of questions that I saw come forward in the survey here were things like, hey, business leaders are really resistant to change. How can I convince them to adopt our best practices? How can I show business leaders that enablement is actually helping to drive company level goals? And how can I convince my company to hire other enablement leaders so that my team can scale, the company can help scale? I think that in the early days, one of the things that we really leaned on at Persona was showing time savings for our subject matter experts. So to give you an example of this, before, again, go back to 2022, before we had dedicated e-learning modules on our different products, we were relying on our product managers and our engineering managers to periodically, monthly or bi-monthly, depending on the kind of new hire cohorts, like spend hours actually running live trainings with those folks. Which is a great like high touch solution, but those folks, those product managers and engineering managers, like that's not really the core aspect of their job and what they're being judged on, right? They're being judged on delivering good experiences, and helping like the actual kind of technology advance, right? The same could be said for team leaders, like business leaders and people managers. A lot of their time, they might be delivering a ton of trainings that we could take off of their plate, that we could help either scale through creating scalable resources or taking on those trainings and leading those trainings, ourselves on the enablement team. This includes things like activities. So, for example, one of the things we do is we have this format called a teach back, where the new hire essentially, we kind of flip it, where the new hire essentially treats the instructor as a new hire to teach a concept to us. Anyway, all that to say, time savings is like a huge metric that you can pull from. And I think it's one that's a little bit overlooked in terms of showing that you're providing value because you're allowing other subject matter experts at the company to get some time back to do their job and kind of up leveling the conversation there. That's just one data point. I also wanted to have a section here talking about many different quantitative and qualitative data points that you might use when you're thinking about making business cases internally, or things that you're tracking to try and assess the effectiveness of your programs. I won't voice over every single thing that I've laid out here on the slide in the interest of time. I will say that we use a lot of surveys and interviews to gather both quantitative data like a readiness score of new hires, as well as their own satisfaction with our onboarding programs, as well as the qualitative piece of like actively feedback. What did they feel like was missing from the program? What were their favorite things about the programs? Um, you know, and even really tactical things like what's broken in those programs, even if it's just like hyperlinks that are out of date or things that we've kind of overlooked in content maintenance. I think another really important thing is to try to do a longitudinal analysis of performance data and whatever key metrics your organization really cares about. So I've listed a couple here, things like time to productivity. If you're working with sales teams, it might be things like their win rates, their quota attainment rates, or time to quota attainment. And it's always if there's a benchmark in terms of, before you start launching your programs or before you try to launch new programs or new enablement efforts that are targeted at helping to increase these, what's the baseline? And then after in subsequent cohorts, once you've launched some training programs, is there a correlation in terms of positive trajectory and positive trends there? Another one that I'll just call out here before moving, just in the interest of time, is that more recently we've also been using like sales enablement tools and things like that to help gauge analytics related to the content that we're creating and the collateral that we're creating, to see like what the adoption rates are looking like, how many times this is being sent. Who's sending this? Can we correlate those to actually specific deals that we're seeing won, that we can then again link to revenue that we're helping generate for the larger business? And last but not least, in terms of showcasing value and making a business case for enablement and learning, it's just really the reality of the situation is you have to be very budget conscious in today's day and age, right? And so what that's looked like for us today at Persona is trying to do a lot of tool consolidation. We work across many cross-functional teams and try to consolidate what tools make sense for many different teams. So, for example, when we were selecting a sales enablement tool, there was a process where we really like evaluated it with many different stakeholders to make sure it was the right tool that could fit many different needs. Even when we're talking about just like our LMS, we try to be quite lean in terms of licensing, rather than kind of blanket giving access to everyone. It takes a little bit of effort on our side to like activate and deactivate folks, and make sure that folks who like need access to the LMS have it versus folks that maybe don't need access depending on where they are in their employee journey temporarily get deactivated. But just being really cognizant of this and operating as lean as possible can go a long way. Okay, last but not least, this last theme I had was around scalability, building upon your foundation. Types of questions that I saw related to this area, things like, hey, how do we keep content and programs up to date, especially if we're working with a product that, has a huge product development velocity. This question, I think, is a repeat from the first category, but I think it's one that also comes into play with thinking about scaling your programs, which is how do we balance making sure that we're meeting learner personalization needs with like the scalability needs of my team as well as my company. And I think this gets manifested in many different ways, right? You're creating programs for potentially several different roles, as well as thinking about all of the different learning styles that every individual and individuals even within the same role might have, as well as just the logistics of like the employee experiences. And what I mean by that is, whether you're a remote first company, whether you're a hybrid company, if you're a company that's looking about international expansion, there are a ton of variables to keep in mind. And this is something that we're still grasping with today in our day-to-day at Persona. And so, don't have all the answers here, but some of the things that we've really leaned on is having this mindset of continuous iteration. Some of the content that we created was quite broad at first. And through this process of kind of continuous iteration, we've at times specialized some of the content, kind of made branches of it that are for specific roles. Another example of continuous iteration I could share here is that we do quite a bit of education around like fraud, given that's really relevant to the digital identity space. What was previously just like a couple hours of education, we saw that it wasn't really giving folks and arming folks with the information they needed. We really needed to build like an entire unit of content around that. And so this cycle of continuous iteration is something that we're always thinking about on the enablement team at Persona. We develop a piece of content or we develop a program, we launch and prototype it. We want to monitor to see how the reception is going, as well as to make sure that we're keeping up to date with the industry, with the company. We actively collect feedback and we enter the cycle again, right, to continue to iterate. I think, did I see someone come off mute, Khalil, or?
Yes, I have a few people that have questions, so I already preparing it. I'm preparing to allow Laura to ask hers.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I'll
No,
almost
you don't
done
need to
here. I'll just
apologize.
say, no worries. Last thing I'll say, a learning about scalability for me is that content maintenance is a huge piece of what we're doing in our day-to-day today. Again, after 3 years of building a ton of content, whether that's e-learning, collateral, battle cards, onboarding programs, um, you know, we didn't really have a plan for content maintenance in the early years of our team, and it's become an increasing focus about how are we intentional about making sure that content stays up to date because that's a huge part of scalability for us, making sure that the programs that we launch don't get stale. And that they continue to be as effective as possible, even as we continue to try and build. It's obviously there's a huge kind of purview of things that we've created over the 3+ years that the team has existed. And so we are just being more intentional about building opportunities for ourselves to focus on content maintenance and build that into our workflows. But that's all I had. I will stop sharing and hand it back over to Cleo to kick us
Right.
over to the interactive
I'm
portion.
going to move it right away to Laura. Laura, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brandon. That was super helpful and very informative to give me some ideas to work with. I've been in an L&D role for corporate training since probably 1998. So I've been around a few companies, large and mid-size, and recently I'm working in a mid-sized company and just was curious for you or other people who are also joining us to talk about anything that you have seen that's new or innovative in the way that we're bringing on new hires. We're looking to revamp how we do some of the things that we do. We certainly are invested in the best practices. So some of the things that we do that are table stakes is we want to give everybody a new hire buddy. Once they join, we want to make sure that they have a clear understanding of our company mission, vision, and values. We want to obviously get them entrenched in our products and services right away and be able to connect with others on their teams and start to learn their roles. But we are a hybrid company. Some people work in offices, some people work remotely. And I was just curious if you had a sense of anything that you've seen or heard about from other companies that are doing that's just really new and different that you think would be something worth pursuing or learning more about. So I would just appreciate that from you or anybody else on the line.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I can take a first crack. I think that a lot of what you laid out is great in great context. And a lot of what we are also doing today, pairing with an onboarding buddy, doing company-wide type of onboarding sessions to, make sure that they're connecting with leaders around mission, vision, values, and things like that, in addition to their role-based learning. I would say a couple things. This first one, I don't think it's necessarily like a new thing, but I do think it's
Mm-hmm.
something that is part of the culture that has been really effective for us at Persona, which is especially because you mentioned hybrid, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure. And you said mid-size, so I'm not sure like if it's across many different locations, but we're headquartered. Persona is headquartered in San Francisco, and one of the things that we're very intentional about is particularly during the training period um, offering the opportunity for folks that are remote or are at some of the other locations that are not part of our headquarters to come be around other folks at our headquarters for a period of their onboarding period. And it's not just something that happens during onboarding. Every quarter, Persona also does what we call SF Week to kind of kick off the quarter, allow folks to be around each other because I do think that, especially during the onboarding period, it's really helpful to just have shoulders to tap on, to sit around other folks. So I think I know it's not feasible for every company, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be a big challenge, but I think that has been super valuable. I think something that's a little bit more cutting edge and something that we're still playing with a little bit in our, within the enablement team at Persona is given the proliferation of AI tools, things like ChatGPT, and depending on whatever tools you're using, at Persona, we use Notion a lot for our internal knowledge management. And Notion has rolled out some AI features recently that are similar to ChatGPT, where it's kind of a chat bot that like anyone can prompt the AI with questions. And we're trying to figure out like effective ways to fold that into onboarding to help act as a little bit of a buddy too. I think the biggest challenge there is with those tools, they're only as good as the source information that they're pulling from, right? So if
Right.
your internal documentation and your knowledge hubs are out of date and not well maintained, then they're going to be led in the wrong direction. And that's actually been kind of a directive for us is to build within our internal knowledge hubs, we're building kind of curated, verified sources of truth. It's a
Mm-hmm.
big initiative for our team right now to then so that we can kind of lean on some of those AI querying tools to help with the edges of some onboarding and some kind of engagement, especially because of just the sheer scale of folks that we've been hiring. But I would also welcome other opinions from the group here if other folks have things that they can share.
If anyone does, you can just click like raise hand and then I'll give you the permission. And Laura, I also, from my experience, from what I've seen with some of our customer base, that's been interesting is kind of like touching base on the learning curve versus the forgetting curve. So
Mm-hmm.
building out, there's learning moments that won't be kind of like a one-time moment that you just kind of like go over, but you build it in layers of going in depth and over time. So maybe it's not as innovative as a concept, but I think like to kind of see how you actually build it out in the onboarding process, looking at it as kind of like a process people go through over time and how they meet the same knowledge, but on different layers and over time. So it makes more sense. Something you learn on day 2, you probably do not remember already in day 5 or
Definitely.
an overwhelm of information. So I do agree
Yes.
with Brandon, the ability to find what you need when you need it, like the on-time learning is always gold, but also kind of like to strategize on when you meet what and making sure it's kind of like repeating at different layers so that it then gets sticks kind of better and of course practicing moments. So I know at least in our product, a lot of people use the agent of the practice. So you can ask it to build like scenarios and practicing and get feedback, even if it's not a customer facing role. But if they learn something and now they practice on explaining it or sharing about it or stuff like that, it kind of helps the information stick in and make it maybe even more engaging in a way.
This is great. Thank you so much. I'm taking notes.
Thank you so much for sharing with us the question. It was really good. Anyone else wants to share? Shy group. Okay. Thank you so much for your question. I'm gonna move to the next one, and then if anything comes up, guys, you can also share in the chat. Please do. And I'm gonna invite Shannon to share her question as well. Shannon from Austin, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I am pretty new in the L&D space. I got tasked to start our L&D program
Oh, now we lost you. Shannon, wait. We lost Shannon. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we hear you. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. The Wi-Fi at our office is really spotty today. But anyway, I'm pretty new in this space. I'm leading our very first L&D program at our company. And so where I'm struggling is we do have a lot of enablement opportunities for our
It's gonna be a challenging one with the Wi-Fi.
go-to-market teams. I think I lost him. Do y'all want to skip me? I think that I'm I'm breaking up pretty bad.
Yes, so if it's okay, I know your question because you wrote it, so I'm just gonna share it myself, if that's okay. So the lovely Shannon is leading her company's first L&D program and was asking how can she create a program that drives engagement and is actually relevant and impactful. We don't have company goals outside of be profitable. So it's hard to understand what will actually align to business needs while feeling relatable to the employee population. So what are different ways to engage employees in L&D initiatives and what feels impactful and relevant for them?
Thank you, Khalil.
Yeah, I think this is a
Okay.
big question, and then also just thank you for sharing, Shannon. I think contextually, what you've provided, it does seem quite freeform, in terms of this as a new initiative, and given that I think you had said that there isn't really like clear company-wide goals besides just be profitable. I think that when you're thinking about developing the programs, it could just be helpful to, I guess, and I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi is going to hold up for this, but I would be curious also in terms of like, what are the types of roles that you're developing it for? Is it like for a sales team, or you mentioned there are many different enablement opportunities, but I'd be curious in terms of like, the actual roles that are going to be engaging with this and the stakeholders that are going to be engaging with the enablement content, because I think there's a lot to be learned there. Even though the company is just be profitable, those teams probably, or I would hope they have kind of directives, little submissions within their teams in terms of like how they fit into the larger piece of the puzzle. I think the ultimate kind of uh, like the way that people are going to engage with enablement material is if it's going to actually help them in their roles. And so a tactical example I could give here is when I'm working with our sales team, um, they may not engage with like e-learning if it's a 2 hour course where they have to take it, and it's an optional thing, or especially for some of our senior folks who have been in the field, been in the role for a long time. But if we deliver them a piece of collateral, that is going to make their lives easier, that's going to actually, up level their conversations that they have, with their prospects, and help them win more deals, um, that's gold to them, and they're going to engage with that, right? And so I think it's targeting it to, it might be, you might not have a good directive from the company-wide level, but if you're thinking about your stakeholders and who you're actually delivering the experience for, put yourself in their shoes, hear about what their pain points are, and then see if there are ways that like you can architect what you're creating to make their lives easier. I think that's the end goal of one of the end goals, at least, of our efforts as enablement folks here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I completely agree. The teams I've seen at least that like really hit the mark on really supporting the business were the ones that were very close into understanding their different departments. What are they trying to achieve? What are they being measured on? What's their business goal? And then what's interrupting them from succeeding tremendously? And that's where you want to come in. I completely agree with that. They need to see the value in it. Time they're learning is time they're not working, so they need to know why. I agree. Oh, and Patrick is raising hand. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hello,
Yeah.
Khalil. Hello, Brandon. And hi, Shannon. Yeah, so I actually have a question that's very similar to the previous one. Of course, I'm a solo enabler. My team, this is the first time they've had the enablement function. And I'm trying to spin up the programs. I of course have very strong buy-in, which is wonderful, but my company has the standard, what is it called? Problem where you hire your best salesperson to become the manager, right? And of course, that person is great. They know the business. However, they're not used to managing the workload of onboarding new reps, upskilling them, and understanding, how to get them from point A to point B. They're very bought into like, hey, I'm here to help, but how can I really help them understand and provide them some air coverage on how to manage the onboarding themselves to really have, see the motions and action on them appropriately, because it's not that they're not willing to, it's just that they're so bogged down with the day to day. They're still managing accounts, God forbid. So how can I really help them, get over that barrier?
Oh, I think this is a big one and a challenging one for
Definitely.
sure. Um, yeah, out of curiosity, part of it is I think like mentorship and coaching for them, and I don't know where that comes from. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if you have frameworks already to kind of help managers. That's actually something that has been on our list to do for a long time, like people manager training. We just haven't been able
Hmm.
to do it. Other ways that I've seen it, like that I've seen us try to scaffold this for because we have the same situation as you, Patrick, where a lot of
Hmm.
our folks are like player coaches. They're managing, but they're
Yeah.
also like in the field. Um, and so I think the other part of it is like aligning them to mentorship. Ideally, like the folks that those managers report to can help kind of model the type of behavior, give them the frameworks if, again, you don't have like particular training for folks that are new to people management, and you don't already have that in place. That's where I would start. But yeah, I would also, again, welcome anyone from the group to share what they've seen work for them.
No, thank you for that, Brandon.
Patrick, do you know if like do they have a problem with the ramp up time for salespeople? Like, is that a pain point?
It's not even that far. They don't track anything. There's nothing.
First of all,
There's like, yeah, I will be the one trying to roll out, okay, what is the ramp time? It's really not even to the point where we're decreasing ramp, is we're just trying to get ramp to be smoother, right? My company is in a good position of having really low turnover. So we have like 10 over a decade long standing sales reps. So the turnover is slow, but of course that's not always going to be the case. But when there is one, the managers are kind of like, well, here is a list of tasks, go shadow these people. Very old-fashioned type of sales training. So I'm trying to bring in a little bit of structure, trying to kind of give them like, okay, here's kind of like the breakdown of weeks and how to look at them. But I'm not seeing a lot of participation because I don't think like you said, Brandon, I think it is the people management skills. I think the core of it is not anything about the onboarding. I think it's really that they need to be able to structure their time to be a people manager versus someone who just thinks that 50% of the time they'll do the people management versus being in the field.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for the additional context. I think, and it sounds like you're already trying to create frameworks for them. Similar problem that we faced where we'll create these beautiful spreadsheets, where we'll actually kind of outline like, here's our starting place for us in terms of what we think would be an effective onboarding program. For your team, and then we have a dialogue with them in terms of like, what do you see, where, what do you want to see changed, in terms of getting them to adopt it. The only other idea I really have here is, Patrick, if you have a touch point with like the new hires, or the ICs in terms of like their satisfaction coming out of the ramp period, that could be a data-driven approach, like especially if there's not a huge adoption to say like, hey, we conducted post-onboarding interviews and like folks are giving us feedback on these areas in terms of what they'd like to see, especially if I don't know what the culture is like at the company you're currently at, but if they're a little hesitant to go directly to their manager with open feedback. That could be
Mhm.
an interesting way to kind of surface that and provide a data-driven approach, especially if folks are resistant to adapt to whatever frameworks you're creating, or like more structured onboarding programs.
I think that sounds like a good idea. I think, tackling it from multiple angles. I think really honing in on the people people management skills is probably the one that I'm always like what type of revenue skill can we put in first? But that's not always the case. Excellent. Thank you so much for that.
And also, like, one more thing before Sally also raised hand and probably wants to jump in. Do you think they even know what ramp up looks like? Like, is there a
No.
measurement to say this person is now ramped up?
No, I don't think so. I think it's like, can you close your own deal without asking a question from a peer? It's very, very on the ground level.
So I think like knowing what a successful onboarding, like what is that moment you say a person is ready to go or the onboarding was successful would be a good place to start from.
Yeah.
To then helping everyone say, okay, so this is where we want people to get to. So just
definitely more focus on milestones. Start small, like start with the big chunks, right? Okay, perfect.
Alex,
Yes, wonderful.
New York Queen. You just need to unmute yourself.
This is me working in so many windows. Okay. All right. Hey, this is such a multifaceted question. And I've been dealing with a lot of it myself. So I'm going to give you like a little bit of additional stuff that we found to work, but then some stuff that is still in the works. Okay. Just to support what Brandon's already shared with you. Part of it that Khalil already began to speak to is like a really important starting point is going to be building out what an effective 30, 60, 90 looks like. And that will take you not building it on their behalf, but you coaching them around how it is that you build an onboarding plan. And for at least within the sales department, that should be working back from their actual KPIs, right? So if their goal is, I'm going to give a really silly example, like if their goal is 30 calls a day by like day 90, like you obviously want to scale that back to like what should that look like within the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Have them really focus on exactly what Cleo said, like what exactly does success look like? How do we gauge that when they are by definition fully ramped? Make it more tangible than they don't ask me questions. Because if they're not able to answer that, that means they're probably not able to actually gauge the success of their existing people, which is like a bigger problem. That goes into the other component, which before I move on from there, we actually created for onboarding, we created a new hire checklist that provided a demonstration of how they can create their own onboarding. So by giving them the tooling, outlining this is how you structure internal resources, this is the order by which you do it, this is the thought process you go through as you put them in this order, these are the details you put for every meeting you set on their calendar, right? Like by outlining that for them, I gave them a framework by which they could build their own version of it because they were like, oh, okay, I'll just follow this model, but use my own resources. And then another big part of what you just said, which I'm currently navigating, I don't have the big solution for, but I'm working towards trying to solve for, is these player coaches. It sounds like that's a real opportunity to go to that leadership team and say, I'm noticing that onboarding is suffering in X capacity as a result of these leaders being unable to manage onboarding simultaneously with carrying a book of business, simultaneously with managing their people. Would you be receptive to me setting up a call for the three of us whereby your manager can walk through like what holds them back from onboarding, what holds them back from management, what are the responsibilities that influence that, and then empower the leader of that team to create KPIs that are specific to those managers that empower not only carrying a book of business, but empower them to actually be doing the manager and onboarding skills to help them also reach their own quota and goals. Whew, that was a lot of information. I hope that at least some of that was helpful. I was like, oh my God, I think about this every day. I hope some of this will be helpful for you.
That was the fastest I've heard. Like, did you have that speech written down?
Nope, not even remotely. I was just feeling the pain Patrick has as he was telling that story. And I was like, let me try to help.
Oh, yes. I realize I can still talk. So yeah, thank you so much, Sally. No, I think that provides a lot of context. And of course, I think the player coaches is like a very consistent issue in our space.
100%. I mean, we get it, but like everything else suffers as a result of it, you know?
Oh, for sure.
So I think
for
it's
sure.
just to like help them see how.
Yeah. We got to do the investment on their end. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sally. Yeah, that was helpful.
Sally, do you also have a question or just a
No,
Okay.
just trying to sit in a chair and observe and listen. And then of course I got excited about this one. Thank you.
So I think we have time for maybe one last question. I think Shania also had a question that you'd love to share. Shania, are you still up for it?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Lightly.
Oh, okay. Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Cool. Thanks everyone for sharing. I love that last tip also of just creating a listening session and getting people together to say, hey, this person has this challenge. Do you mind if I bring you two together to talk about it instead of like trying to be the translator? Because that could be tricky. So thanks for sharing that. My question, I work at a healthcare company and we do new hire orientation every 2 weeks, onboarding. One of the things that's challenging for us is balancing the kind of two purposes that we are trying to achieve of one, just getting them to feel energized, getting them to feel like this is a place that's going to be in alignment with their values. They're excited to be here. They're ready to get started. And then we have a bunch of compliance things that we have to do to get them on board. And it's the biggest tension because we start the day on this high note and then we're ending on them kind of like clicking through compliance e-learning. So I'm curious if you've worked with any organizations that have kind of balanced that tension well and done both those things.
Oh, the compliance question is always tough. Well, yeah, I mean, it's pain point for us too. We are constantly chasing folks that may be overdue or near overdue in particular clients, or excuse me, particular kind of compliance requirements. Um, you know, again, I don't feel like I have a perfect solution here, but what we have done at Persona is particularly because we've been doing a lot of hiring, um, making sure that they have FaceTime with other folks beyond their cohort too. So actually, this Thursday, there's like a dedicated happy hour to kind of like frame it so that folks around the company are getting to meet new folks in the new cohort. Um, another big thing is the enablement team has partnered with our people ops team to launch what we call like persona onboarding series, where like leaders and executives from the company will do these kind of recurring, whether they're like fireside chats or presentations or Q&A sessions, to again like drive up excitement and provide visibility. One of the principles that Persona really tries um, to live by is like trying to be as much of a flat organization as possible, where anybody can reach out and chat with our CEO, our CFO, our COO, and things like that. And so I think just providing some opportunity to go beyond the new hire cohort. I think a lot of folks that is a huge benefit if you have buddies or you have people that you're kind of onboarding and ramping up with, that helps generate some of that excitement. But even going beyond that and an opportunity, offering some opportunities to generate excitement with folks that are like higher up at the company, or like that they folks might not typically engage with, in a cross-functional capacity, can help with the excitement piece. On the compliance piece, it's tough. I don't know if there's a real panacea for that, other than a big challenge for us has been trying to like automate how we can think about um, tracking and reminders, using like tools that we have, making the pain of like reminding people and getting people to do it a little less painful. But yeah, still a tough challenge to balance. So yeah, also open to hear from other folks if they have recommendations in this area.
I can share a little bit from what I've seen from our customers. I also don't know like what your tech stack and what's like what it enables you or doesn't. So obviously like that's part of the puzzle, at least with us, because we have like automations that allow you to kind of like time when someone is being like assigned to any type of like compliance or training or whatever. So from what I have seen, if you kind of like build out this really daunting, like people see just a long list of a lot of like things they need to do, and everything is like at once, it looks like hell, basically, like hell on earth. So what I've seen is kind of like you build it out gradually, not doing like fun in the beginning and then horror in the end, kind of like timing when things need to happen, and then gradually. When you do it every 2 weeks, I would assume manually is insane. So maybe you need to make sure you have some kind of solution that helps you kind of like more automate that and time that, but to do it gradually. So you have like part of the day is exciting, and then you have an hour of compliance, but then you have something like time with your mentor. Then you have, so you kind of break it down, not making it such a horrible thing. And then I think in general, sometimes having one-on-ones, it can also be maybe a little bit exhausting. And then maybe it's nice to just do something boring like a compliance. It can be like a break on a day. So play around with when things happen so it doesn't get too overwhelming. And of course, make sure you have also automations for like reminders and nudging and updating. Like the more things are working automatically for you, I think the better. That's my insight.
Thank you. Y'all can't see me, but I've been nodding vigorously throughout. These are great ideas.
Perfect. Perfect.